It's time for Speaking of Speaking. Quick tips and tools to take you from stage fright to spotlight. This podcast gives you an inside look from the world of public speaking and speaking secrets you need to be bold from the stage, no matter what business you're in. The host of Speaking, Carl Richards.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to the Speaking of Speaking podcast. Another great guest is joining us today, and we're going to be talking about building a six-figure income with nothing but a simple webcam. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is a visual going to work for audio? But I can't think of a better person to transform the visual into audio. And I say that because Gary Rogers has been a professional speaker for over 50 years. If anyone can paint the picture, Gary can. He's also a former executive in the television production motion picture industry as well. He's produced TV commercials, infomercials, and corporate videos for many of the world's largest corporations. We're talking AT&T, Motorola, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Procter Gamble, Toshiba, Toyota, Honeywell, Blue Cross, Siemens, Coca-Cola, and there's a list of others that we're not going to mention, but there are many, many others that Gary has worked with as well. As a former training manager with 3M Company, Gary taught public speaking and presentation skills. We're so glad he's here today. Using revolutionary new video technology, Gary continues to provide presentation skills training in virtual classes on the internet. Gary, welcome to Speaking of Speaking.
Thank you. So good to be here.
So you've been at this for more than 50 years. What got you into this speaking/video world in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. I started my career with 3M Company years and years ago. Fortunately, we're just on audio and people can't see how old I am, but I started as a salesman and I did well at sales. They promoted me to a sales trainer, teaching other people how to sell. Then they made me a training manager, teaching a lot of different courses, one of which was public speaking. They sent me through a course and certified me. They didn't want their corporate managers putting people to sleep. And I talked 3M Company into doing something at the time was revolutionary. I talked them into buying a very, very expensive video recorder. This is years before home video. And we put a camera in our training room. And when people gave their speeches, we actually recorded it and played it back. And most people, when they saw themselves, they just, oh no, am I really doing that? A picture's worth 1,000 words. And it literally revolutionized our training overnight. I'd never seen anything like it. I fell in love with video at that time. 10 years later, I love video so much that I decided I was going to start my own television production company. I had no experience other than turning a camera on. Fortunately, I hired some people that knew what they were doing. Over time, we worked with a lot of companies, as you've already mentioned. I've had the opportunity to direct a lot of Hollywood stars in my production career, including Academy Award-winning actor Charlton Heston.
Oh, wow.
And I tell everybody, if I can direct Moses, I'm not going to have any trouble directing anybody working with a webcam. A webcam really is the new television production camera, if you will. Anybody can reach anybody with an internet connection using just a simple webcam. But most people are making so many mistakes, they just don't know how to use the webcam.
So basically what you're saying, Moses may have brought down the tablets, but you give the solid instruction on how to use the camera correct, regardless of who it is, even if it is Moses. That's on the camera. It's funny you mentioned the camera thing, too, because that's something I learned in Toastmasters. And we're talking, early 2000s. And the early 2000s, cameras were still large, but they were getting a little bit smaller, at least. They were almost portable. They still weighed not quite a ton, but as much as a bag of potatoes, but they were still more portable than they were back in the day. But that's one of the things that they showed us to do was always get yourself on camera to see how you're speaking and what it looks like. That's one thing for sure to improve your speaking. So with building your six-figure income, though, how do you do that with just a simple webcam? There has to be other tools that you need to do that.
That's a good point. When I sold my business and went into retirement, again, it only lasted 2 weeks. I thought I've got to do something else with my life here. I decided at that time, webcams were becoming popular on the internet. A webcam is the most powerful promotional tool, sales tool, training tool I've ever seen in my life. When I started teaching how to use a webcam on the internet, literally, I had no following. I had no list, no Nobody knew me. People told me, Gary, you got to spend a lot of money in Google ads and Facebook ads if you want to get any business for your coaching.
Yeah.
And I did. I spent a ton of money for several years with Google and Facebook and webinars. And I would get a client here, a client there, but most of that money was just going down the drain. I was losing money for several years. I finally decided I've either got to go back to retirement or I've got to find out some way to promote my services without spending an arm and a leg. And I had a friend tell me about networking groups where you could go give an elevator pitch free of charge, promoting your product, your service, your company, whatever it is you want to promote. I thought, well, my gosh, that sounds interesting. He gave me a couple of URLs. I went and watched people giving an elevator pitch, and I was just amazed. Most people were just struggling. They hadn't even thought out what they were going to say. Most elevator pitches were just 60 seconds, and people were actually reading their elevator pitches on a webcam. And oh my gosh, my business really started to revolutionize when I started to give a 60-second elevator pitch. And now all I do is teach other people how to promote their businesses through networking, through elevator pitch. We actually produce a 1-minute promotional video for all of my students. Video is the number one promotional tool on the internet, as you well know. It just opened up a whole new world for me and for all of my clients. And virtually anyone can start their own business if they've got a webcam and expertise or knowledge or experience in a particular given field.
You're right. That webcam is a very powerful tool. And the elevator pitch, it's one of the things as a speaker trainer that I've trained people on. I've been in networking groups where you don't even get 60 seconds. You get 30 seconds, and then you get the theatrical hook. You know, it's ripping you off the stage, or you get the ding, you get the bell saying, sit down, your time's up, because they have to get through 30 people in an hour, and there's still a speaker, and there's announcements. So you really need to be succinct with that. And you're absolutely right. The individuals who struggled with articulating what it is that they do, and that's not leaving a good impression at all. So if you can master that skill, wonderful. And now that we're in this virtual world, the webcam is just such a powerful tool in expressing who you are and what you do.
It is, but it's a terribly frightening tool. As you well know, public speaking is the number one fear that most human beings have. And then you put them in front of a webcam, which is unnatural. Now you're increasing the fear. And a lot of people, they just shrivel up. They're not going to use a webcam and put themselves out there, which is a real mistake, because it is the easiest, fastest, and cheapest way to market your business, your product, your service, your course, whatever it is you want to promote.
Absolutely. You need to be speaking. You need to get comfortable. Well, the old saying, the old adage, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But that means you really have to be comfortable being on camera, whether you like it or not. This is the world we live in. Yes, there are still physical stages, but you need to know how to use that tool. So how do you build that? If you're in this place where you're still maybe pivoting as a result of, this is being recorded, of course, in October of 2022. So we've just come through a pretty crazy part of a pandemic here. How do you get comfortable with that? What are some of the things you need to do to really embrace that?
Well, first of all, you need to feel confident in what you're talking about. You need to be passionate about what you're talking. In giving an elevator pitch, there's certain rules that I teach class. Who's your target audience? Who are you talking to? The ultimate objective. What do you want to do with that 30-second or 60-second elevator pitch? You've got very little time in 30 seconds to say anything with real impact. And I teach people how to use virtually every word. Every word's got to be well thought out. In 30 seconds or 60 seconds, those words have got to have meaning.
Oh, yeah.
So first step, who's your target audience? What do you want to do? What's your ultimate objective with the elevator pitch? And then come up with the appropriate words. Then time yourself. Make sure you're staying within your allotted time limit. And then you need to practice. 60 seconds or 30 seconds, you need to memorize what you're going to say. If you can't do that, you might as well go on to something else. You're not really serious about your business, but memorize what you're going to say if it's only 30 or 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Now, if you're just talking about your business, obviously you don't need to memorize it, but those are skills that I teach my people. But the biggest one, once you've got the words down and you've got the timing down, those words are absolutely worthless unless they come alive. And that's the hardest part of all. And that involves public speaking skills. You've been doing that a long time. You're very good at it. You've got a great voice. But for most people that haven't been trained, and it makes my blood boil, in my country, you can graduate from high school and in most colleges and get a degree without having to take speech as a required subject. It's the most powerful thing that any human being can do, and they don't make you go through formal training in high school and college. It just makes my blood boil.
Isn't that wild? We learn math, we learn science, so we learn how to dissect a frog, but we don't learn how to dissect or improve our own speaking so we can articulate clearly our messages and all of those things. And you're absolutely right. It's the same here in Canada, by the way, just so you know that it's not something that's clearly taught even at the university level. There might be some courses or programs that will incorporate it, but it's still very hit and miss, and it's really impeding people when they get into the work world and into the business world. They struggle. It's guaranteed employment for people like you and I, because then we can help them fix that challenge. And I just want to go back to something you said a moment ago about the 30 seconds and the 60 seconds and the words, and every word counts. Having spent 25 years in radio broadcasting, 30 seconds, it goes by fairly quickly. That's only 70 to 85 words max, depending on your rate of speech, of course. So it goes by fairly quickly, but you have to maximize that time. So in doing that, I wanted to ask you this question. In maximizing those words, how much of it is scripted out, and how much of it do you think should be off the cuff? Or should it all be scripted in that 30 to 60 seconds, but you make it sound like it's natural? And
problem with not putting it down in writing and scripting it, if you will.
Yeah.
If just doing it off the cuff. And I go to a lot of networking meetings where 99% of everybody gets in front of the webcam to give a 30 or 60 second elevator pitch. They wander, they struggle, they run out of words because they haven't thought it out, put it down on paper. And if you've only got 30 or 60 seconds, if you memorize it, now you can really give it from the heart.
Yeah.
You can make the words come alive. If you're just wandering and thinking, well, what am I going to say next? It's not as powerful as it could be.
what are some of the challenges or things that you hear on a frequent basis that just make your blood boil? Anything that jumps out at you? One of the ones that jumps out to me, and maybe you've got one that it could be the same one. One of the ones that jumps out to me is you'll hear this a lot in some of the multi-level marketing companies. When those individuals are doing their pitches, they'll say something like, "This week I have a BOGO." Every time I hear that, I just cringe. But what are some of the ones that might jump out to you as needs improvement or needs to have a complete defib in their messaging?
Most of my clients, and every one of my clients, I literally produce a promotional video where they are the spokesperson on camera. Now, we put a lot of cutaway shots with video clips so that it's not just a talking head, but almost all of my students say, "Oh, I can't do that. That's just not me." I teach them, and we work back and forth in exercises where they need to project and give inflection, enthusiasm to make those words come alive. And most of them say, "I just can't do that." And literally every single one of them can do that, and actually do that when it comes time for filming, after we've gone through all of the training and making those words come alive. It's something they can do. To answer your question, the word "I can't do that," I understand why they're saying it. They're timid, they're shy, it's frightening, but everyone can make their words come alive, make their speaking really command attention if they use the proper skills.
And you use the webcam, obviously, to help people get comfortable. It's just like a stage, really. There are a lot of people that have stage fright. There are a lot of people that have camera fright or webcam fright, whatever we want to call it. So how do you then get people? You have a workshop that helps people navigate through that anxiety and build their confidence with that?
Yep, absolutely. It's just a matter of doing. I mentioned the steps before. I help them write the script. Once we get the words, we'll time it out. Now let's talk about bringing those words come alive. And most people, I'm projecting right now, but this is not the way I would speak normally. If we were just sitting next to each other, I would turn down my enthusiasm a little bit and I would talk in my normal voice, which I'm doing now. And you wouldn't be offended by that, but it turns people off when they get in front of an audience, a live audience or a webcam audience, a webinar. You need to crank up the energy, the enthusiasm, the projection if you want to command attention with your voice, which is really the most powerful promotional tool, sales tool you'll ever have.
I've quite often been told back in the days when I worked in radio that, oh, you have such a nice radio voice. I'm like, it's just my voice. But to your point, there is a certain amount of projection, animation, smile, all of those things that if you're sitting there having a conversation with your spouse, or if you're, between mouthfuls of food at dinner, you're not going to have that same focus and articulation that you would have in the example that you're giving here. So that workshop that you're referring about, is it something that is continuously running? Is it evergreen, or is it something that you run several times throughout the year? How does that all come together?
Well, I have a course where I teach people how to promote their businesses through webcams, elevator pitches, promotional videos, and many other promotional things that goes on for 13 weeks. The first thing we do is get the elevator pitch and the promotional video script written. Then we start working on the delivery skills, the speaking skills. The final thing that we do is actually film it, put it all together. Now we get them out and I introduce them in places where they can give elevator pitches for free, doesn't cost them anything, where we can post their videos to thousands or potentially millions of people to get their business. This is their script, their service, their product, their course, whatever it is. It relates to every individual that I work with. In my paid course, it's a lengthy course that goes on for many, many weeks, but right up at the front, the first thing we do is get their script written and produce a promotional video. And then I work with them in getting it out in promoting it. And one last thing before we leave each other, I'll invite any one of your audience to come to a free webcam workshop. And they go to the URL, which is CompanyFlix, and that's spelled CompanyFlix.com/webcam workshop. That's a 90-minute workshop. They will learn things that they can do with a webcam nobody's ever dreamed of before. And it will help them whatever they do for the rest of their life in using a webcam and promoting their business, their product, or their service. And I invite anybody to take advantage of that and come to the workshop.
I love it. What a phenomenal offer. And I didn't realize it was free. So thank you so much. We'll make sure that that link is posted in the show notes so you can click on it and register. And there you go. Final thought before I let you go, Gary.
I just thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure working with you. You are a pro. You got a great voice. I thank you for inviting me to be on your webcast.
Thank you very much.
Webcast, podcast. I'm sorry.
Call it whatever you want to call it. It's all good, Gary. So thank you very much for joining me today. And remember, get out there and own the platform.
Thanks for listening to the Speaking of Speaking podcast. Fired up about something you heard today? Want to learn more? Be sure to visit carlspeaks.ca. And don't forget to follow Carl on Twitter @CarlRichard72 or join the Facebook group Speaking of Speaking.